So as you can see, these are the seat foam bases for my car. They fit very nicely into these seat bases that I made in an earlier video. In fact, they fit almost perfectly into there. And I thought I'd start perhaps working on the seat bases and leave the backs for a minute, because I think the bases are going to be a bit easier, he said, hopefully. And my covers are turned up from AH Spares in the UK. These are leather, and as you can see, this one's inside out, but as you can see, they're a red leather with a white piping. The leather's very soft, quite thick, looks like it's reasonably good quality, and it smells very nice, as leather tends to. So the job is to fit that onto here, and it's something I can't rush. You'll also see they've sewn in a bit of calico there, which is quite nice, because that will help to smooth off this edge here. Now, one of the issues with this is that, as you will know, the cushion part needs to sit inside of this moulded section here, so that the side bits are around the perimeter are higher. That sort of gives it quite a nice contour. The issue is that this is padded, and the padding on this centre section appears to be almost the same thickness as the height on this perimeter section here. So it seems to me clearly that the perimeter section needs building up slightly, otherwise when I put all this together it's just going to be flat across there. And if you remember, I think I showed in the video just before this that the original seats had a flocky down of some sort around there, I guess for the same reason, to build them up. So what I'm going to use for starters is some of this felt, which is just some of the underfelt I used on the carpet, quite thick, probably about 3/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, but of course it will squash down a little bit. I've seen this used before. There are some photos on the net and people have used this. So I'm going to cut sections of that to cover this over. Then I'm going to glue the centre piece on, and I'll have a look and see how much higher this is, and if necessary I'll pad it out a little bit with some white padding that I've got here. The other thing that concerns me a little bit is the transition into the metal side here, because although it fits well, it's obviously, I mean, it's smooth, it's not a problem, but I think this needs a bit of padding around the front as well, so I might put some felt around that. I have got some other felt, which is just ordinary black felt, but is thicker. I'm not sure how much of it I've got, but that could be quite useful for that. So that's that. Now the other thing too that I forgot to mention is that these are handed. They're clearly left and right, but they're not marked in any way. So I've got to try and figure out which bit goes which, where. You'll notice that this side of the seat has got quite a pronounced dip in it, and this side's a lot smoother. This cover has quite a solid long double seam in it just here. I'm not sure that shows up on the camera. I think they might call that a French seam, but I'm not quite sure. But it's a solid seam, and this one is just a small tuck. So I'm assuming that this long seam covers over this edge here, and the smaller one covers that. I've got to be very careful, of course, because once it's glued on, it's going to be a devil of a thing to get off. So I need to double check that. But I might start making a bit of progress on that now, and we'll see how we go with that. And you won't hear the swearing from whichever country. Now, this is just a little test run. I fitted the cover on. It's not glued or padded or anything. It seems to fit, reasonably well. I really haven't taken a lot of care. I've just literally just pulled it over. But you can see this front section here is not too bad, but you can see that this side here needs some padding in it. Both of these sides need padding in them, and if I don't do that, it's going to be a bit daggy around there. The front sort of holds together, but it still needs a bit of padding, because I really want this to be nice and raised up around the periphery. It would appear that that seam that I've mentioned before runs down there on the long side, and you can see the bulge there where the metal is. So that, again, as I mentioned, I really think that needs some padding. But the purpose of that was just basically to see if it fits. It still needs a bit of fettling. I haven't pulled it down properly or anything, but you can see the white piping there, and I think the colour looks really good. Another thing I've decided to do, because this is floating slightly, it fits the base really well, but there's just a little bit of movement which moves it slightly away from the metal frame, and I don't want it to push through the leather at all. I've decided that I'm just going to glue this down onto this base here, just using some spray adhesive, spray contact cement, which I've put on. So now I'm going to just drop that, hopefully, so we don't grab too quickly, into there, so that it doesn't move around once the leather is put into place on that. And this is some of the thinner black felt that I'm going to use just to go around the periphery of this for the transition between the foam and the steel. This is very strong. It's probably about 1/8 of an inch thick, I suppose. I've had this for a while. You know, you tend to just collect these things up. Another thing I've seen done, and I think the original foams didn't have it, or they may have had some cloth around the edges, is to glue a piece of cloth, calico or a piece of cotton or something over this, just to sort of strengthen up the base so that perhaps it doesn't crumble, and also to ease the transition so it's a little bit smoother. I don't want to push out too much on the sides with felt, because I think I'll probably have trouble getting the cover on. And there's the first step. This is glued into the pan, and I've put some felt on here just to raise this up a little bit. Certainly I'm going to have to put some cloth, I think, around here just to ease this transition so that it doesn't show through. It's pretty smooth anyway, and I think it'll probably pull down, but I just want to make sure that the transition across the edges is nice and neat before I put the cover on. So that's the next step, is to find some cloth, calico of some sort, or anything you've got, an old sheet or something like that, and just cut some sections. I'm doing these seats one at a time in case I stuff something up. From my experience, the second time you do something is always better than the first. Okay, so that's all the padding done, and the front section there, the bit of felt there which blends that in a bit, and I've also applied a piece of cotton over this centre area here just to strengthen it. I'm not sure whether that's really needed, but I've seen it done in a few photos and things that I've looked at on the internet, so I don't suppose it can hurt. And I've carried that over the back here, which is similar to what the original padding had. So the next step, I guess, is to just apply contact cement to this centre area and to the back of the seat cover, glue that in place, and then have a look and see how much more padding I need to sort of bolster that out around the perimeter. What I've decided to do, rather than apply the glue to the whole section and to the whole section here, is just apply it to the front area to start with, so that it's just going to be a bit easier, I think. I'm a bit, I dread stuffing this up basically, so we'll just apply, this is brushable. I've decided to use a brushable contact cement in this area because I think I can just get a better spread. It's easier to see where I've put it on and where I've missed, and some of the spray stuff isn't quite as easy to see. So I'm just going to apply that onto there and onto this front section here, so that if for some reason I muck it up, because I know a lot of you think that I know what I'm doing, but basically I'm making it up as I go along. So I don't want to put the whole thing on and wreck it. I figured that I can just get that off easy. So I'll just let that dry now, and then I'll put it together. So as you can see, I've stuck this first little section in, and that glued all right, which allowed me then to hold this back. I'm just holding it back with a bit of wood there, just stop it from flopping forward while the glue dries, and then I can ease that into place. And I think that's a better way to do it than trying to glue the whole thing in one hit, which is a bit more fraught. Well, I've glued that down, and the fit is good, but it does appear to me that I am still going to have to put quite a bit of wadding around this periphery area. I'm not sure how well this is showing up on the camera, but this area around here to give it the shape that I want, which is, as I said, what they had originally with a flock type product. Now I've got this, which is a polyester wadding, so I'm going to cut some of that and pad that up in there and see what comes up when we do that, see if we can give it a bit better shape than it's got. Well, I've put the wadding on there. I've put 2 layers of it, so it's quite thick, and I'm hoping that will give me the shape I need. I'm now going to try and pull this over, and I'm not going to do that on film because it could take me a little while to get it right, so we'll see how we go with that. Well, after lots of pulling of leather and foam and pushing and clipping, I managed to get the seat covered, and the overall effect is actually pretty good. I'm pleased with the way it's turned out. I only needed to use one piece of the felt around this area here because it was high enough with just one piece, and I did try some of the white polyester material, but it was really too thick and the cover wouldn't go over the top. So that's it. It's very tight and hard. Hope it softens a little bit with people's bums on it. I guess it probably will. The white piping I think looks really good. It's a good contrast, but there is an issue with piping, and had I thought about this I may have just gone red with red piping, and the issue is that it very clearly defines the perimeters of the seat. Not such a problem in here, but more a problem around the outside. So it means that it's got to be really square, and that is very hard to do. The job itself is actually very hard to do. Not as easy as the MGA, I'll say that. So that's it. The underside, now please, if you're an auto upholsterer or an upholsterer, don't say, tear your hair out and say, my God, what is he doing? I've left the fullness in there deliberately. I haven't trimmed off any of this because I figured that if the seat needed to come out, at some point it would be easier to get all this off and get it back on again. The seat is held on with these little clips, which you might be able to see here, which sort of push in there and grab hold of the leather. They've got like 2 little spikes on them. They're quite solid in there, and you've really got to push them on, hammer them on. But they grip really well. The other thing that concerns me a little bit is that where the seat sits in the metal base, it rubs a little bit here. And I think over a period of time it might rub through, so I might put a little bit of thin rubber into that. But look, overall, I think it's pretty good. This metal tray edge here, you can see that is a bit noticeable. It doesn't show when it's in the car. It is padded with felt, so it should be fine, not going to come through the leather. It's just that you can see the transition there into the foam. But look, overall, a difficult job. You need a lot of patience if you're going to try it, but I'm pleased with the finished product, and it looks really nice in the car. So I guess the thing to do now is to attack the seat backs, which I think is going to be difficult, and is also going to be, I believe, my 50th video, which is a bit of a milestone. So I'll do some of that and do some filming.